The year is 1165. Europe, scarred by the Second Crusade's failures, clings to a fragile peace. Kingdoms jostle for power, the papacy clashes with the Holy Roman Empire, and whispers of heresy slither through the crowded cities and desolate countryside. In this crucible of faith and ambition, a letter arrives, carrying within it the seed of a legend that will grip the continent. At Clairvaux Abbey, Bernard of Clairvaux, the influential Cistercian abbot, receives a copy of the letter. Its words, promising a powerful Christian king from the East, resonate deeply within his pious heart. After the devastating losses in the East, could this be the sign, the divine intervention Christendom so desperately needs? The letter, purportedly from Prester John, describes a kingdom overflowing with riches, piety, and military might. It tells of rivers of gems, armies of 1,000,000 strong, and unwavering devotion to Christ. Scribes work tirelessly, copying the letter, and their labor ensures its swift dissemination throughout Europe. In Freising, Otto of Freising, the respected historian and bishop, studies the same letter. His scholarly mind, trained in the art of scrutiny, immediately notices inconsistencies. The language seems too flamboyant, the details too fantastical. A seed of doubt is planted within him. Otto delves deeper, comparing the letter's claims with existing knowledge of the East. He consults with travelers, reads ancient texts, and pores over maps. The more he investigates, the more questions arise. In Rome, Pope Alexander III receives the news of Prester John with cautious optimism. He recognizes the potential of such an ally, but also the danger of being deceived. The political landscape is treacherous, and a false hope could be more damaging than no hope at all. Throughout Europe, the Prester John letter ignites a spark of renewed fervor for the Crusades. Knights dust off their armor, kings rally their banners, and the promise of a powerful Christian ally fuels dreams of reclaiming the Holy Land. The legend of Prester John spreads like wildfire among the common folk. Ballads are sung, stories are told, and the image of a benevolent Christian king in the East becomes a beacon of hope in a world filled with hardship and uncertainty. Bernard of Clairvaux, initially enthusiastic, uses the Prester John story to inspire his followers. He preaches of a coming alliance, a divine intervention that will restore Christendom to its former glory. His words carry immense weight, swaying many to believe in the legend's truth. Otto, however, continues his investigation, quietly gathering evidence to support his growing suspicions. He shares his doubts with trusted scholars, seeking their counsel and expertise. The truth, he believes, is paramount, even if it shatters a cherished dream. Pope Alexander III receives conflicting reports. Some confirm the widespread belief in Prester John, while others, like Otto's, raise serious concerns. He is caught between the desire to capitalize on the legend's potential and the fear of being exposed as a dupe. The fate of the Prester John legend, and perhaps the future of Christendom, now rests in the hands of Pope Alexander III. Will he embrace the myth, knowing it may be false, or will he expose the deception, risking the fragile hope it has ignited? The answer will determine the course of history. The letter had arrived at Clairvaux like a beacon in the darkness. For Bernard, weary from witnessing the Crusades' failures and the relentless squabbles of Christendom, it was nothing short of a miracle. Prester John, a Christian king of the East, a warrior of God, the very idea resonated deeply within his soul. In the quiet solitude of the chapel, Bernard poured out his heart to God. He saw Prester John as a divine instrument, sent to bolster the faithful and crush the infidel. He prayed for guidance, for the strength to spread this joyous news and reignite the spirit of the Crusades. Bernard shared the letter with his fellow monks, reading aloud the fantastical descriptions of Prester John's kingdom, rivers of gems, armies of righteous warriors, and a land overflowing with piety. His words ignited a fire in their hearts, a renewed sense of purpose and hope. He penned letters to influential figures across Europe, sharing the miraculous news of Prester John. He hoped to galvanize support for a new crusade, to unite the fractured kingdoms of Christendom against the common enemy. Meanwhile, in Freising, Bishop Otto received his own copy of the letter. While Bernard embraced it with fervor, Otto approached it with a historian's skepticism. He scrutinized the text, comparing it to other accounts of the East, searching for inconsistencies and anachronisms. Doubts began to creep into his mind. The letter's descriptions were too fantastical, too embellished. The claims of Prester John's power seemed exaggerated, almost unbelievable. He wrestled with the possibility that it was a fabrication, a carefully crafted deception. In Rome, Pope Alexander III was presented with the letter amidst a flurry of other pressing matters. He recognized the potential of the Prester John story to rally support for the papacy and the Crusades, but he also sensed danger. Deception was a common weapon in the political games of the time. He consulted with his advisors, weighing the potential benefits against the risks of embracing the Prester John legend. Some urged caution, pointing to the lack of concrete evidence. Others argued for seizing the opportunity to bolster the morale of Christendom. Back at Clairvaux, Bernard continued to preach the gospel of Prester John, inspiring countless people with the promise of a powerful Christian ally in the East. His words spread like wildfire, igniting a new wave of religious zeal. Otto, driven by his doubts, began a quiet investigation. He questioned travelers and merchants, seeking any corroborating evidence of Prester John's existence. But the more he learned, the more skeptical he became. He compiled his findings in a detailed letter to Pope Alexander, outlining his suspicions and urging caution. He knew that challenging the Prester John legend would be a risky move, but he believed it was his duty to speak the truth, as he saw it. The Pope received Otto's letter with a heavy heart. He now faced a difficult choice: to embrace the hope offered by the Prester John legend, or to confront the possibility of deception and risk shattering the fragile morale of Christendom. The shadow of Prester John had fallen upon Europe, and its true form remained shrouded in mystery. In the venerable city of Freising, Bishop Otto, a man known for his sharp intellect and historical acumen, first encountered the legend that was sweeping through Europe. The letter, purportedly from Prester John, had reached his desk, carried by a breathless messenger from a neighboring diocese. Initially, Otto regarded the tale with cautious optimism. The prospect of a powerful Christian kingdom in the East, capable of flanking the Muslim forces, was a welcome notion. He set about examining the letter with the meticulousness of a seasoned scholar, eager to ascertain its veracity. He consulted maps, seeking to reconcile the letter's geographical descriptions with existing knowledge. The kingdom's location remained frustratingly vague, its borders shifting like desert sands. This imprecision was the first seed of doubt planted in Otto's mind. Otto began comparing the letter's language and claims with other accounts of the East, including travelogues and chronicles. He noted discrepancies, inconsistencies that gnawed at his sense of historical accuracy. Certain phrases, certain descriptions, seemed borrowed, exaggerated. He sought the counsel of his learned secretary, a young monk well-versed in languages and historical texts. Together, they scrutinized the letter, dissecting its claims and searching for corroborating evidence. The more they investigated, the more elusive the truth seemed to become. Doubts solidified into genuine concern. The letter spoke of rivers of gold, cities paved with gemstones, and armies of fantastical creatures. Such hyperbolic descriptions, while perhaps intended to inspire awe, instead rang hollow to Otto's discerning ear. He began drafting a cautious letter to Pope Alexander III, expressing his reservations about the Prester John narrative. While he acknowledged the potential benefits of such a powerful ally, he felt compelled to share his growing suspicions regarding the letter's authenticity. Weeks later, a reply arrived from Rome. Pope Alexander III acknowledged Otto's concerns, but urged him to continue his investigation discreetly. The political implications of the Prester John legend were too significant to dismiss outright. Otto, thus charged, delved deeper into his research. He scoured ancient texts, seeking any mention of Prester John or his kingdom. He consulted with merchants who had traveled to the east, peppering them with questions about the lands beyond Christendom. Gradually, a picture began to emerge. Not a picture of a glorious Christian king, but a tapestry of half-truths, embellishments, and outright fabrications. The letter, Otto concluded, was almost certainly a forgery. He compiled his findings into a comprehensive report, detailing the inconsistencies, the historical inaccuracies, and the lack of supporting evidence. It was a damning indictment of the Prester John legend, a carefully constructed argument built on years of scholarly expertise. With a heavy heart, Otto sealed the report and dispatched it to Rome. He knew that his findings would challenge the hopes of many, but he believed that truth, however painful, was paramount. The fate of the Prester John legend, and perhaps even the future of the Crusades, now rested in the hands of Pope Alexander III. The weight of Christendom pressed heavily on Alexander III. The endless squabbles between monarchs, the ever-present threat of heresy, and the sting of the failed crusade were a constant burden. Now, this letter, promising salvation from the East, had landed squarely in his lap, a mixture of hope and potential disaster. The letter, Prester John, a Christian king of unimaginable power, ruling over lands brimming with gold and piety. Could it be true? Or was it a cruel jest, a fabrication designed to exploit the desperation of the faithful? Politically, the timing could not have been more opportune. The Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa remained a thorn in the papacy's side, constantly challenging its authority. An alliance with Prester John, however fantastical, could shift the balance of power dramatically. His advisors were divided. Some, blinded by faith, urged him to embrace the letter wholeheartedly, to proclaim Prester John as a divinely appointed savior. Others, more cautious, warned of the dangers of deception, of the humiliation that would follow should the letter prove to be a forgery. "We must proceed with caution," Alexander declared, his voice echoing through the hall. "This letter, whether divinely inspired or a product of human ambition, demands careful scrutiny. We cannot afford to be swayed by blind faith alone." Discreetly, Alexander dispatched emissaries to the east, tasked with gathering information about Prester John. He charged them to seek verifiable evidence, to separate fact from fiction, to uncover the truth behind the legend. Weeks turned into months, and the reports trickled in. Some spoke of whispers and rumors, of a powerful Christian kingdom beyond the known world. Others dismissed the story as a fanciful tale, a product of wishful thinking and embellished travelers' accounts. Word of Otto of Freising's investigations reached the Pope. Alexander summoned the bishop to Rome, eager to hear his findings firsthand. Otto's meticulous analysis, his uncovering of inconsistencies and potential fabrications, resonated deeply with the Pope's own growing doubts. The Pope wrestled with the dilemma. To publicly denounce the letter would be to risk shattering the fragile hope that had taken root in Christendom, potentially weakening the resolve for future crusades. But to embrace it, knowing it might be a lie, would be a betrayal of his sacred duty, a corruption of the very faith he was sworn to protect. He convened the College of Cardinals, laying bare the evidence, the doubts, the political calculations. The debate was fierce, the opinions sharply divided. The fate of Prester John and perhaps of Christendom itself hung in the balance. The decision rested with Alexander. He knew that whatever he chose, it would have profound consequences, shaping not only the future of the papacy, but the course of history itself. The weight of the world bore down on him as he prepared to write. His decree would be subtle, a careful dance between faith and pragmatism. He would neither fully embrace nor outright condemn Prester John. He would allow the hope to linger, a flicker in the darkness, while continuing to seek the truth, however elusive it may be. The papal dilemma was resolved, for now. The letter spoke of a kingdom unlike any other. Gold flowed like rivers, precious stones paved the streets, and the very air shimmered with divine light. It was a paradise on earth, a testament to the glory of God and the power of his faithful servant, Prester John. Otto, ever the historian, noted the exotic details. The letter described creatures both familiar and fantastical, elephants and camels alongside griffins and unicorns. Rivers of honey and manna flowed through the land, nourishing a population of pious and powerful warriors. The letter detailed Prester John's piety. He claimed to be a devout Christian, ruling over a vast empire filled with churches and monasteries. He professed his desire to aid the Christian West in its fight against the infidels, offering his armies and his wealth to the cause. Bernard saw in the letter a divine hand at work, a Christian king in the East, powerful and righteous, ready to strike a blow against the enemies of the faith. It was a sign, he believed, that God had not abandoned Christendom. Otto, however, remained cautious. He noted the inconsistencies in the letter's geography. The descriptions of rivers and mountains did not match any known regions of the East. He began to suspect that the letter was not what it seemed. The Pope recognized the letter's potential. A unified Christendom, inspired by the hope of a powerful ally, could turn the tide against the Muslims. But he also knew the dangers of placing his faith in a false promise. Inspired, Bernard preached the news of Prester John. He painted vivid pictures of the kingdom's splendor, igniting the hearts of his listeners with renewed faith and a fervent desire to join the fight against the infidels. Otto focused on the inconsistencies within the letter's narrative. The descriptions of religious practices were strange, mingling Christian traditions with elements that seemed foreign and unfamiliar. The more he studied the letter, the more convinced he became that it was a forgery. Otto presented his findings to the Pope, laying out the evidence that pointed to the letter's fabrication. Alexander listened carefully, weighing the potential consequences of both believing and disbelieving the Prester John story. Whispers of doubt began to circulate, reaching even Bernard's ears. He struggled to reconcile his faith in divine providence with the growing evidence of deception. Otto worked tirelessly, documenting every inconsistency, every geographical impossibility, every theological oddity. He sought to expose the truth, even if it meant shattering the hopes of Christendom. The Pope was left with a choice: to embrace a lie that could unite Christendom, or to expose the truth and risk plunging Europe into despair. The fate of the legend, and perhaps the future of the Crusades, rested on his shoulders. In the quiet solitude of Freising's scriptorium, Otto delved deeper into the enigma of Prester John. The more he studied the letter, the more inconsistencies he found. It was like a beautiful tapestry, meticulously woven, yet riddled with subtle flaws. The descriptions of Prester John's court seemed exaggerated. Rivers of gold, a palace built of ebony and ivory, jewels used as common building materials. Otto had read accounts of Eastern wealth, but this surpassed all reasonable bounds. It felt more like a fantastical tale than a factual report. He compared the geography described in the letter with the maps available to him. The locations mentioned, while exotic and enticing, often clashed with known geographical realities. Rivers flowed in impossible directions. Mountain ranges appeared where none existed. The East was vast and mysterious, but not infinitely malleable. Otto sought corroboration. He questioned traveling merchants, those who claimed to have ventured to the edges of the known world. He showed them passages from the letter, asking for any confirmation, any familiar detail. Most simply shook their heads, their faces etched with confusion or amusement. While Otto scrutinized the details, Bernard of Clairvaux remained hopeful. He saw the letter as a sign, a divine spark rekindling faith in a world shrouded in darkness. He prayed for guidance, for the wisdom to discern truth from falsehood. In Rome, Pope Alexander III received reports of Otto's growing skepticism. The Pope understood the power of hope, but he also knew the dangers of blind faith. He instructed his own agents to investigate, to seek independent verification of the Prester John narrative. Otto, driven by his commitment to truth, began to document his findings. He drafted a carefully worded letter to the Pope, expressing his growing doubts and outlining the inconsistencies he had uncovered. He knew his words could have profound consequences. Pope Alexander received Otto's letter with grave concern. The bishop's reputation for integrity and scholarship was beyond reproach. If Otto doubted the authenticity of Prester John, the Pope had to take it seriously. News of the growing skepticism reached Bernard. He refused to believe it. He argued with visiting dignitaries, defending the veracity of the letter with unwavering conviction. He saw doubt as a form of heresy, a betrayal of faith. A coded message arrived for Otto, sent by a contact within the papal court. It hinted at political machinations, at factions seeking to exploit the Prester John legend for their own gain. The seeds of doubt were now blossoming into a chilling realization. The Pope faced a terrible dilemma. To denounce the Prester John letter would risk shattering the fragile hope it had ignited. But to embrace it, knowing it might be a fabrication, would be a betrayal of his sacred duty. He sought divine guidance, wrestling with the weight of his decision. As a storm gathered over Freising, mirroring the turmoil in Otto's heart, he knew that the truth, however painful, must eventually come to light. The legend of Prester John, once a beacon of hope, was now casting a long, ominous shadow. Rome was a hive of whispers. The Prester John letter, though not officially endorsed, had become a constant topic of conversation. Alexander knew the power of stories, how they could shape perception and, more importantly, influence policy. He suspected manipulation but saw potential benefits. Bernard, still hopeful, saw the letter as a divine sign. He believed that God, in his infinite wisdom, had provided Christendom with a powerful ally. He prayed for guidance, that the Prester John narrative would galvanize the faithful and inspire renewed fervor for the Crusades. Otto, however, remained skeptical. He meticulously compared the descriptions in the letter to existing geographical knowledge, finding discrepancies that fueled his doubts. He suspected a political motive, a deliberate attempt to mislead and manipulate European powers. Alexander summoned Cardinal Boso, a shrewd advisor known for his understanding of political maneuvering. He tasked him with discreetly investigating the origins of the Prester John letter, to uncover any potential factions that might benefit from its widespread dissemination. The Genoese merchants, ever eager for new trade opportunities, saw Prester John as a potential ally in securing lucrative routes to the east. They whispered of forging alliances, bypassing Muslim territories, and accessing untold riches. Certain factions within the Holy Roman Empire saw the Prester John legend as a tool to weaken the papacy. A powerful Christian king in the East could potentially challenge the Pope's authority, providing an alternative source of spiritual and political leadership. Bernard, oblivious to the political machinations, continued to preach the gospel of Prester John, urging his followers to prepare for the coming alliance. He saw the legend as a call to spiritual renewal, a chance to reclaim the Holy Land and expand Christendom's influence. Otto, after weeks of painstaking research, compiled his findings into a detailed report. He outlined the inconsistencies, the geographical impossibilities, and the potential political motivations behind the letter. He prepared to send his report to Rome, knowing that it could shatter the hopes of many. Alexander received Otto's report with a heavy heart. He had suspected as much, but the confirmation of his fears presented a difficult dilemma. The Prester John legend, however false, had become a powerful force, uniting disparate factions and rekindling hope in a weary world. Cardinal Boso, acting on Alexander's orders, continued his investigation, delving into the shadowy world of political intrigue. He sought to identify the individuals or groups who had orchestrated the Prester John deception, to understand their motives and neutralize their influence. Alexander faced a profound moral dilemma. Should he publicly denounce the Prester John legend, risking the collapse of morale and the fragmentation of Christendom? Or should he cautiously embrace it, using it as a tool to unite the faithful and advance the interests of the Church, despite knowing the truth? While political forces maneuvered in the shadows, the seed of hope, planted by the Prester John letter, continued to grow in the hearts of the faithful. The legend, regardless of its truth, had ignited a flame that would continue to burn, shaping the course of history in ways no one could yet foresee. The air in Freising's scriptorium hung thick with the scent of parchment and ink. For weeks, Otto had been meticulously tracing the origins of the Prester John letter, chasing down every rumor and cross-referencing every claim. He felt like a hound on a scent, and now he believed he was closing in. The Chronicle spoke of a group of merchants from the East who had visited the Holy Roman Empire decades prior, bearing tales of a powerful Christian kingdom. The descriptions, though vague, echoed certain phrases and motifs found in the Prester John letter. Too many coincidences, Otto thought. News of Otto's growing skepticism reached Bernard in Clairvaux. He found himself torn. The Prester John letter had ignited a spark of hope, a vision of Christendom united and triumphant. Could he bear to see that light extinguished? In Rome, Alexander faced a storm of conflicting opinions. Some cardinals urged him to denounce the letter outright, citing the growing evidence of fabrication. Others, swayed by the popular fervor, argued for cautious acceptance, seeing Prester John as a valuable diplomatic tool. Otto summoned a merchant known to trade with the East, a man named Johann. He had heard rumors that Johann had been involved in delivering documents and messages from various factions within the Holy Roman Empire to contacts in Italy. "Tell me, Johann," Otto began, his voice calm but firm, "have you ever carried a letter purportedly from a Christian king in the East? A letter detailing unimaginable wealth and military power?" Johann stammered, denying any involvement, but Otto saw the fear in his eyes, the telltale signs of deception. He pressed on, revealing details he couldn't have known without Johann's involvement. Otto's letter to Bernard painted a grim picture. It spoke of factions within the empire, eager to incite another crusade for their own gain. The Prester John letter, Otto suggested, was a carefully crafted fabrication, designed to manipulate the Pope and the European powers. Alexander, now armed with Otto's findings and his own growing suspicions, faced a daunting decision. The truth, if revealed, could shatter the fragile unity of Christendom, but to knowingly perpetuate a lie, even for political gain, was a dangerous game. Otto continued his research, determined to uncover the full extent of the deception. He knew that the truth, however painful, was the only path forward. He penned another letter to the Pope, urging him to proceed with caution. Bernard wrestled with his conscience. The hope offered by Prester John was intoxicating, but he could not ignore the growing evidence of deceit. He prayed for guidance, seeking to discern God's will in this tangled web of faith and politics. Alexander made his decision. He would proceed cautiously, neither fully embracing nor fully denouncing the legend of Prester John. He would use it as a tool, a means to rally support for the Church, while simultaneously seeking to uncover the truth behind the fabrication. The fate of Christendom, he knew, hung in the balance. The seeds of doubt, once sown, began to sprout within the fertile ground of Christendom. The tale of Prester John, once a unifying force, now threatened to divide the faithful. Even in the hallowed halls of Clairvaux, the whispers of skepticism could be heard. Within the monastic community, arguments flared. Some clung to the promise of a powerful Christian king in the East, a divine intervention against the encroaching darkness. Others, influenced by the rising tide of reason, questioned the veracity of the letter, citing its outlandish claims and lack of credible sources. In Freising, Otto continued his meticulous investigation. Each new piece of evidence, each subtle inconsistency, reinforced his growing conviction that the Prester John letter was not what it seemed. Messengers arrived from distant lands, bearing fragmented tales and conflicting accounts. Some spoke of Eastern potentates claiming descent from the Magi, others of hidden Christian communities clinging to their faith in the face of persecution. But none matched the grandeur described in the letter. In Rome, Pope Alexander III found himself caught between the fervor of the faithful and the skepticism of his advisors. The political implications of the Prester John narrative were immense, but the truth remained elusive. Whispers of Otto's findings reached the papal court, fueling the Pope's anxieties. The prospect of publicly endorsing a fabricated legend was a dangerous one, potentially undermining the authority of the Church and shattering the fragile unity of Christendom. Bernard, the once ardent believer, found himself wrestling with his conscience. The initial hope that had filled his heart now felt tainted by the creeping shadow of deception. He prayed for clarity, for a sign that would dispel the darkness that threatened to engulf his faith. But the silence of God was deafening. Otto, driven by his commitment to truth, continued to piece together the puzzle. He sought not to destroy hope, but to illuminate the path towards genuine understanding. In towns and villages across Europe, the debate raged on. The Prester John letter had become a mirror, reflecting the hopes and fears of a world in turmoil. The Pope, faced with mounting evidence and growing dissent, knew that a decision could no longer be delayed. The fate of the Prester John legend, and perhaps the very fabric of Christendom, hung in the balance. The ink was ready, the parchment awaited, the time for choosing had come. The weight of the world and the Church pressed down on Alexander. The letters, reports, and rumors surrounding Prester John swirled around him like a tempest. He knew a decision had to be made, one that could either solidify his papacy or shatter the fragile unity of Christendom. In the heart of Clairvaux, Bernard sought solace. He wrestled with the possibility of deception, a tool of the devil meant to undermine faith. Yet, the potential of Prester John's kingdom to bolster the Christian cause could not be ignored. He prayed for clarity, for a sign that would reveal the true path. Otto, ever the scholar, continued his painstaking investigation. Each inconsistency, each historical anomaly solidified his conviction. The Prester John letter was a carefully constructed fabrication. The question now was, how to reveal this truth without plunging Europe into despair. Alexander convened his council, a collection of cardinals and trusted advisors. He listened intently as they debated the merits and dangers of either embracing or denouncing the Prester John legend. The political ramifications were immense, the religious consequences even more so. Bernard grappled with his conscience. Could a lie, even one intended to inspire faith, ever be justified? He knew the power of belief, but also the corrosive nature of deception. The potential for good had to be weighed against the inherent evil of falsehood. With a heavy heart, Otto composed his report to the Pope. He detailed the evidence he had gathered, the inconsistencies he had uncovered, and his unwavering belief that the Prester John letter was a fraud. He knew his words would carry weight, but also that they might be unwelcome. Alexander read Otto's letter with a growing sense of dread. The bishop's conclusions were undeniable. The Prester John letter was a lie. The Pope now faced a choice of immense consequence: reveal the truth and risk shattering the hope of Christendom, or perpetuate the myth for political gain. The messenger arrived at Clairvaux, bearing a sealed letter from the Pope. Bernard's heart pounded in his chest. He knew the fate of the Prester John legend, and perhaps the fate of Christendom, rested within those pages. Alexander stood before the College of Cardinals. He spoke of the hope that the Prester John letter had inspired, but also of the doubts that had arisen. He announced his decision. The Church would neither endorse nor condemn the legend. It would allow the faithful to believe as they wished, while discreetly discouraging any action based solely on the letter's claims. Otto received word of the Pope's decision. He understood the political calculations, the need to maintain hope. Yet, a part of him mourned the sacrifice of truth on the altar of expediency. The scholar in him could not reconcile the deception, even if it was well-intentioned. Bernard, too, learned of the Pope's carefully crafted compromise. He recognized the wisdom in it, a delicate balance between faith and reason, hope and reality. He understood that in a world consumed by darkness, even a flicker of false light could provide guidance. The legend of Prester John lingered, a testament to the enduring human need for hope, and a stark reminder of the dangers of deception. It served as a mirror, reflecting both the unwavering faith and the political machinations of the medieval world, a world where the line between truth and fiction often blurred, and where the pursuit of salvation could be easily manipulated.